Start.
Okay. Hi, I'm Marilyn Ellie. I've been a member of Clearwater for, well, the last 30 or so years, and have probably been working to close Indian Point for almost that long, at least 25 years. And finally, it is closed, and hardly anyone even noticed when the last reactor closed. They said for many of those years it couldn't be done, but it has happened. And a lot of that is due to activism of the people in Clearwater and other groups too, of course. But Clearwater has been a stalwart in getting out information that Indian Point has to be closed and having people take action. I'm going to start right up front with saying that this is another call to action. Just because Indian Point is closed, it's not over. First of all, that plant has to be decommissioned, which is a big job. But the Green New Deal is coming up, and I'm sure everybody in Clearwater has heard about that. And the industry is doing something very clever. They're trying to say that nuclear is carbon free and it should be included in the Green New Deal. That would be a tragedy. So, listen to what I'm saying. Maybe you know some of it already, but try to really get some of the facts in your head so that you can be one of those warriors for change and can call your congressional representative. Because the only thing there seems to be any bipartisan support in Congress for is nuclear energy. And that's really saddens me to say that. But the prevailing sentiment in Congress, both the Senate and the House, seem to be that nuclear is carbon free and might have a place or should have a place in the Green New Deal. That's something that has to be debunked. First of all, nuclear power is not carbon free. Nothing that is manufactured is carbon free. There's always a carbon footprint for anything that's manufactured. The industry is very clever and they have a lot of money to keep repeating their lies over and over. But what they do is they say the reactors do not generate carbon, which is true. It is generated during the mining and during the preparation for the fuel, and all of the concrete that these plants take. So that counts. It's called the fuel cycle. And if you're going to get an accurate picture of any fuel, you have to look at all of that. Any fuel that's making electricity really has to consider the fuel cycle and the carbon cost for that cycle. Nuclear is low carbon. Even the Nuclear Regulatory Commission says that. It is not carbon free. And that's one of the biggest lies that have to be debunked because that's what everything else seems to be built on. Um, it's unfortunate, but the industry has a lot of money, and what do we have? We have people who can make calls, constituents who vote, and know how to speak up. So I'm really counting on you to do this as we go through this why nuclear is not good for climate change, and it's not. There are two big reasons. One is time, and the other is money. We don't have much time. Everybody knows that. It takes a long time to build a nuke plant. And how many do you have to build? How expensive do they have to be? And that's what gets into the money. First of all, let me say there has never been a nuclear power plant in this country built that came in on time and on budget. They're always late, and they're always sometimes billions of dollars overdue. That's over budget. That's what happened with Bogle in Georgia. And that's the latest and the newest one. So time and money, those are the two things to think about. We don't have we don't have we don't have the time. And when it comes to money, we need we need the lowest possible cost of generating electricity and the fastest time possible if we're going to decarbonize this economy. And nuclear fails on both accounts. It costs too much, it takes too long to build it, and it's simply not practical, actually, although that can be a very hard point to make. But that's the bottom line. That's the truth. We don't have the time or money to fool around with something like nuclear power that is too time consuming and costs too much money. It just fails on both accounts, and we have no time left. We have no time left for, some people call it an all of the above strategy. Oh, a little of this, a little of that, a little of the other. No. We need to be much more focused and much more practical than that. Amory Lovins has written a lot about this, and I highly recommend, if you want more details, that you check out the Rocky Mountain Institute and what he says about that. He has it down. He's done it worldwide, and he really understands how we can close a nuclear plant. We don't have to bring in gas. Renewables take about 2 or 3 years. They're cheap, and that's what we need to do as we move towards a decentralized grid, a grid that is safer and stronger, where our electricity generation can be turned on and turned off as needed. That's what we need. And nuclear fails on that account too, because they call it baseload electricity, as though that's a good thing. It no longer is. That's a relic. It's a leftover. And we can't be bothered with that anymore. It needs to be fast on and fast off. And I can't emphasize enough that we need to have the cheapest way of generating the most electricity possible. And that takes you right back to renewables like wind and solar, and of course geothermal and wave power and all that, certainly offshore wind. These are the things that will last. They'll be renewable. They don't leave the waste that nuclear power does, that we have to be stewards of for 140,000 years and worry about all of that. So that's what we need to be telling our legislators. You'll also be hearing about something called small modular reactors, SMRs. It's the newest shiny thing that the industry is putting out with great glee. Instead of building big reactors, which were built because they claimed they had a cost of scale, they're building smaller ones. If you listen to the industry propaganda, you can just throw one on the back of a pickup truck and park it in your backyard or nearest park or any open community green space. Well, I'm sure everybody listening to the sound of my voice in this audience knows has some skepticism about what the industry might say, and you would be more than correct. You won't hear anything said about the waste from small nuclear reactors. It might be less. I mean, I'll use an analogy. You might have a Chihuahua or you might have a Great Dane. Either way, you have poop to clean up. And that poop for a reactor, large or small, is radioactive, and it has to be dealt with. And why should we do that when we don't need to? Too expensive, not carbon free, and there are cheaper, better ways that we can generate our electricity in a democratic way, with wind and with solar parks in our cities and things like that. That's what we really need to democratize our energy generation. Okay, I'll also say about small modular reactors that they're just on paper. The NRC has given one company, NuScale, permission to go ahead and try to build something. They haven't really approved it. They're just saying, build it and we'll look at it as you go along and we'll see what happens. Well, I don't feel very comfortable with doing something like a nuclear power plant on a let's see what happens basis. It doesn't sound very businesslike or very safe to me. And their claims of safety have not been tested, have not been proven. There are lots of different designs for these small modular reactors, so they're not going to get any kind of community of savings to scale. And there's no supply chain. Nobody is building the pieces and parts that they would need, because what they're saying is, they're small. You can start with one, and then we'll just bring in another one and drop it off, and you can have two, and you can add to it as your need grows. Well, there's no factory. There's no supply chain. How are you going to do this? And it's not like they're going to build them on site. They're supposed to be built as modules in a factory and shipped out. Well, even the shipping, I think, is a problem. Something to think about there. And they still have the waste problem. It's what got me into being in the anti-nuclear movement, dealing with something that is so deadly and so toxic. I remember Pete saying that if you can't reuse it and if you can't recycle it, you ought to stop making it. And that's exactly what's true here. I would just mention to you Ed Lyman, who's with the Union of Concerned Scientists. It's not an anti-nuclear organization. It's an organization of scientists that work for nuclear safety. And he just came out with a report where he looked very closely at this small modular reactor design. And the title of his report is Advanced Isn't Always Better. And his conclusion was, why would we waste time and resources on something that is a high-risk energy concept? We know what's proven, we know what's cheap, we know what we have, and we know how quickly we can install solar and wind. So those are the things that need to be thought about and acted on. Your charge is to remember some of this. If you need any help, please go to the Indian Point Safe Energy Coalition website or the Nuclear Information and Nuclear Energy Information Service website, our Nuclear Energy Resource Services. All of those are really valuable resources. Beyond Nuclear is another very important resource that you can find. If you would like some help, I am available, and so are others. We have a very small group, but a very active group in helping people go to their congressman. You have to start with a constituent, of course, but if you need somebody that can act, I don't know, I'm going to say is more of an expert. That's really not quite the right term, but if you want somebody that's more familiar with the details and things like that, then invite one of us to go with you. And I really can't stress how important it is that you act on this. We cannot allow nuclear to be part of the Green New Deal. It just totally upsets and overturns the apple cart. It's not green, and it's not cheap, and we don't have time to fool with it. It's something that has to be discarded. So help your congresspeople to understand that, so that they're not just listening to the industry lies and propaganda. So you have your charge, you have some information, you know where you can find more information, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed you'll act on it. Thanks a lot for listening. Enjoy the rest of your revival. The music was wonderful, and that's one of the big things that we're here for. Thank you.